Before we dive in, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. It helps YouTube recommend more of my videos to you. Now let's begin. I had always thought our little neighborhood was safe. Nestled just outside the small town, our street was lined with modest houses, each with a snow-dusted lawn in winter and children's bicycles scattered across driveways in warmer months. My cousin and I, both 14 at the time, had grown up here, long enough to know everyone's routines, familiar faces, and even the subtle rhythms of daily life. Still, the memory of break-ins we'd experienced in the past lingered, like a shadow always waiting just beyond the edge of our cozy lives. 2 weeks before the night that would change everything, we noticed a gray Honda parked near our house. At first, we thought it was just another stranger stopping by or a family friend taking a wrong turn. But then we saw the cameras. 4 men, probably in their 30s, were circling our property, snapping pictures of the house, lingering a little too long in front of windows. They didn't acknowledge us, didn't make a move to talk. It was just the quiet, deliberate attention that set my nerves on edge. My cousin and I watched from the living room window, hearts pounding, and then they drove off without a word. No one believed us when we mentioned it, not even my mom. We were 14, and what 14-year-old's warning is ever taken seriously? Still, the unease lingered. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow on the driveway made my skin crawl. By the time the snow began falling that winter, the world outside looked peaceful and untouched. But I knew better. Danger could be waiting anywhere, even just beyond our back door. Little did we know, the strange men, the quiet Honda, and our past fears were only the beginning. That night, our neighborhood's sense of safety would shatter completely. I woke that morning around 5:30, the room still dim with the weak winter light barely filtering through the blinds. The world outside had transformed overnight. Soft, untouched snow had blanketed the street, making everything look serene and quiet. I shuffled to the window, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and pulled the blinds aside. The forecast had promised snow, but there's something hypnotic about seeing it in real life, like the world pressing pause for just a moment. At first, I only noticed the fresh, powdery blanket covering our yard. 2 inches, maybe a little more, the snow practically sparkling in the early morning light. I exhaled slowly, enjoying the rare peace. But then my gaze shifted and my heart skipped a beat. The pristine surface had been broken. Large boot prints cut across the driveway, leading toward the back door. I squinted, trying to make sense of them. They didn't stop at the door. They continued, looping back halfway, then widened in stride as though whoever had made them had been running. The prints disappeared into the edge of the woods behind our house, swallowed by the trees. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. For a moment, I debated telling my mom, but what could I say? There are strange footprints in the snow, and I think someone's been near our house? It sounded ridiculous, and besides, she probably wouldn't believe a 14-year-old. I told myself it was probably someone walking their dog or a neighbor checking the snow. Even so, an uneasy tension settled in my chest, one that wouldn't leave. Every crunch from the street, every distant bark, made me flinch. I didn't realize it yet, but those prints were only the first warning. Something or someone had been here, watching, testing the boundaries, and they weren't done. Night felt like a heavy curtain, and the house seemed to settle into a deceptive calm. I was in my room, lying on my bed with a glass of iced tea beside me, scrolling through Netflix to distract myself. My cousin was in the next room, probably doing the same. The soft hum of the heating system and the occasional creak of settling wood made the house feel familiar and safe, or so I thought. It was past 9 when I first heard it, a faint click from downstairs, followed by the almost imperceptible sound of a door moving. At first I froze, assuming my mind was playing tricks. But then came the alarm, the low, hesitant beep that signals someone has triggered it but hasn't fully set it off. My stomach dropped. I knew no one should be home. My mom was at work, the neighbors were gone for the evening, and my cousin and I were supposed to be the only ones here. That beep wasn't just a warning, it was a message. Someone was inside. My pulse quickened, and my mind raced through every precaution I had ever thought about. Years of watching crime shows, reading online guides, and hearing stories from older cousins suddenly felt relevant. I had a plan, one I had never imagined I'd need in real life. But now every step had to be calculated. I nudged my cousin awake, whispering in a voice barely above breath. Her eyes opened wide, pupils dilated in fear. "Someone's in the house," I said. Her gasp was almost silent, but I could feel the tremor in her body. "Follow me," I whispered, gripping her hand. The goal was simple. Reach my mom's room on the first floor. That was the safe room, the one place we could barricade ourselves until help arrived. I had the Ruger 10-22 ready, magazine loaded with 5 bullets, chamber empty for now. I didn't want to alert anyone prematurely. The adrenaline made my hands shake, but I forced myself to focus, listening to every creak, every muffled noise, as we tiptoed toward the stairs. Each step felt like it stretched for an eternity. I was hyper-aware of the silence around us, the faint hum of the fridge, the ticking of the hallway clock, and the almost rhythmic thud of my own heartbeat. Somewhere in the shadows below, the intruder was moving, methodical and calm. I realized then that this was no random break-in. This was a person who had been waiting, planning, and watching. We crept down the stairs, the wooden steps groaning faintly under our weight. Every shadow in the hallway seemed alive, stretching and shifting with the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. My cousin clutched my sleeve, her fingers icy and trembling, and I whispered reassurances I didn't entirely believe myself. As we reached the third to last step, my blood ran cold. There he was, a tall man, standing in the living room, facing the Christmas tree as if it were the only thing in the world. The soft glow of the tree lights reflected off the ornaments, making him look almost peaceful, but I knew better. Every instinct screamed that he did not belong here. I froze, my heart hammering so violently it threatened to betray me. My mind raced, calculating every possible escape route, every worst-case scenario. Slowly, I managed to whisper, "I have a gun." My hand went to the chamber, loading a bullet with trembling fingers. The metallic click sounded deafening in the quiet house. He didn't turn at first, just stared at the tree, almost serene, until he slowly pivoted to face us. And then he smiled. Not the natural smile of someone happy, but a wide, uncanny, almost rehearsed grin. "There is no need to be scared," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "I am only the Sandman, here to give you good dreams." My fear shifted instantly into anger, disbelief mixing with adrenaline. This was no harmless prank, no strange visitor. He had broken into our home, invaded our space, and toyed with us. I raised the gun, aimed for the shoulder, and fired. The shot cracked the silence, echoing off the walls. He staggered slightly but then darted toward the stairs, moving faster than I expected. My mind screamed at me to follow, but instinct held me back. I knew the next seconds would define everything. The sound of my single shot seemed to hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. He darted toward the stairs with inhuman speed, his long strides eating the distance between us. I froze for a heartbeat, staring at the retreating figure, then felt the surge of panic. My cousin grabbed my arm, whispering, "Mom!" Her voice snapped me out of the paralysis. I bolted toward my mother's room, guns still raised, every nerve screaming. My chest burned as I reached the door and rattled the knob, trying to open it without making too much noise. The intruder's footsteps thudded on the stairs behind me, then faltered as if he hesitated, giving us a brief, precious moment. Finally, the door clicked open. I shoved my cousin inside and we barricaded it with a chair. My hands were slick with sweat, my teeth chattering, not from the cold, but from pure, unfiltered fear. My mind raced, replaying his words. The Sandman nonsense, the unnatural calm, the smile that shouldn't have been comforting. Every detail was burned into my memory, horrifying in its familiarity. From the other side of the door came the faint echo of movement, then silence. I strained to hear anything, but all I could catch was my own ragged breathing. We had survived the immediate threat, but the house no longer felt like home. Every shadow, every flicker of light was a potential danger, a reminder that someone had been inside our walls. uninvited and unchallenged. Until now. When my mom finally came home moments later, I spilled everything as fast as I could. The footprints in the snow, the alarm, the intruder in the living room. She grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with trembling hands. Outside, the neighbors had already heard our screams and were on the line, their voices urgent and frightened. The police arrived quickly, combing through the house. They discovered the crawlspace door, broken open, evidence that someone had been living in that small, hidden space for an unknown period. No one was there now, but the fresh boot prints led straight into the woods behind our yard, vanishing among the trees. We were shaken, trembling, but safe, for now. And yet a gnawing fear remained, whispering that whoever had entered our home might still be out there, watching, waiting, planning. We bolted toward my mom's room, hearts hammering, gun in hand, adrenaline surging. My cousin clutched my sleeve, trembling, as we barricaded the door with a chair. Every creak, every shadow felt like a threat. Mom arrived moments later, panic written across her face. I spilled everything, the footprints in the snow, the alarm, the intruder. She called 911 as our neighbors, alerted by our screams, waited outside. Police quickly searched the house and discovered the crawl space had been broken open. Someone had been living there for who knows how long, but the intruder had vanished, leaving only fresh boot prints disappearing into the woods. Even after the chaos ended, the fear lingered. Walking past the living room, I flinched at every shadow. Snowy mornings reminded me of the footprints, and the woods beyond our yard, quiet and uninviting, seemed to hide a presence that might still be out there, watching, planning, waiting. Though we survived, our home never felt the same. The intruder wasn't just a memory, he was a possibility, a reminder that safety is fragile, and some threats remain unseen, lurking just out of reach. I grew up in a small town where kids vanished without a trace. Now I know why. I grew up in a small old town in Maine that most people wouldn't recognize by name. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, where the streets are quiet after dark, and where the past lingers like a heavy fog that never quite clears. I moved away years ago, but I still find myself thinking about that town, especially at night when sleep evades me. There's something about the darkness that brings back the memories. The kind you try to forget but can never really shake. When I was a kid, the town had this strange, almost otherworldly atmosphere. It was hard to put into words, but there was a feeling, a deep unease, that we all sensed but never talked about. The adults called it superstition, the kind of thing that happens in every small town. But we kids knew better. We heard the stories, the whispers in the schoolyard, the tales passed down from older siblings. It was always about children going missing, about kids who would wander off and never come back. It started with the little things. Toys left on porches would disappear, bikes abandoned on the sidewalk would be gone the next morning, even when the chains were still locked. Parents would write it off as pranks or the work of some petty thief. But the kids knew better. We always did. The first time I really understood the fear was when a boy from my class, Jamie, vanished. We were in 3rd grade and Jamie was the kind of kid everyone liked. Always laughing, always with a joke on his lips. He was the first to dare anyone to go into the sewers, a place we all avoided. He said he'd heard voices down there, that something was calling to him. None of us believed him, not really, but we didn't want to test it either. One day, Jamie didn't show up for school. It wasn't unusual at first. Kids get sick or go on trips without much notice. But when a week passed and Jamie still wasn't back, the adults started to worry. They searched the town, the woods, even drained part of the river. Nothing. No one talked about the sewers, though. Not even when someone found his sneaker by the storm drain near the old paper mill, the one with the faded sign and the rusted gates. The cops said it probably washed down from somewhere, that it didn't mean anything. But we knew. After Jamie, there were more. A girl from the next street over, twins who lived near the library, a little boy from the outskirts who just started kindergarten. One by one, they vanished, and the town grew quieter, like the life had been sucked out of it. The laughter of children faded. replaced by the whispers of the adults who were now too scared to let us out of their sight. But it didn't matter. When someone or something wanted you, it would find you. I remember one night, lying in bed, listening to the rain patter against my window. I was half asleep when I heard it, a voice soft and melodic, like a lullaby. It was coming from outside, from the direction of the street. I crept to the window and peeked through the curtains. There was nothing there, just the empty street, the old street lamp flickering like it always did. But the voice didn't stop. It called my name, sweet and inviting, like it was promising something wonderful. I wanted to go to it, to step out into the rain and follow that voice wherever it led. But I didn't. I don't know why, but something in me knew better. I climbed back into bed and pulled the covers over my head, trying to block out the sound. Eventually, I fell asleep, and when I woke up, it was morning. Years passed, and the disappearances slowed, then stopped altogether. But the town was never the same. Some families moved away, unable to bear the weight of the losses. Others stayed, trying to forget, to pretend like nothing had happened. But those of us who grew up there, who lived through it, we never forgot. We never could. Now, as an adult, I avoid small towns. I stay away from old storm drains and abandoned buildings, and I never ever listen to strange voices in the night. But every now and then, when I'm lying in bed, just on the edge of sleep, I hear that lullaby again. And I remember the missing children, the darkened streets, and the town that kept its secrets close, buried deep beneath the surface, waiting for the day when it might need to feed again. Sometimes I wonder if anyone else remembers, if the story still lingers in the minds of those who left. But I don't ask, because some things are better left forgotten. Or at least that's what I tell myself when the night comes creeping in. And then there are the balloons, red ones. I used to see them sometimes floating by the riverbank or caught in the branches of a tree. I always thought they were just left over from some birthday party, but now looking back, I'm not so sure. I still see them in my dreams, bright and crimson, drifting silently down empty streets. It's strange how something so innocent can fill you with such dread. About a week ago, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in shaky, almost childlike handwriting. Inside, there was a single photograph, grainy, black and white, like it was taken decades ago. It was a picture of a group of kids standing in front of the old library in my hometown, smiling at the camera. But there was something wrong. In the background, just behind the children, there was a figure, a tall, thin man in a suit, his face obscured by shadow, and at his feet, a red balloon. My heart pounded as I stared at the photo, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. I hadn't thought about that place in years, and now it was coming back to haunt me. The letter didn't include a note or an explanation, just that single, haunting image. I wanted to throw it away, to pretend I never saw it, but something stopped me. Instead, I placed it in a drawer and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't. 2 nights ago, I heard the voice again. The same soft, melodic lullaby drifting through the air like it had years ago. This time, though, it wasn't outside my window. It was in my house, just outside my bedroom door. I froze, too terrified to move, as the voice called my name over and over, growing louder with each repetition. When I finally mustered the courage to open the door, there was nothing there, just the dark, empty hallway. But on the floor, right outside my bedroom, was a red balloon, bobbing slightly as if someone had just let it go. I knew then that it wasn't over, that whatever haunted that town hadn't forgotten me. It had found me again, and this time it wouldn't let go. Last night, I made a decision. I'm going back. Back to that town, back to where it all started. I don't know what I'll find, but I can't keep running. Whatever this thing is, it's coming for me, and if I'm going to stop it, I need to confront it. I booked a ticket for the first flight out tomorrow morning. I haven't told anyone where I'm going. I'm not sure I'll come back, but there's one thing I know for certain. I'm not the only one it's after. And if I don't do something, if I don't end this, it will keep hunting, keep feeding, until there's nothing left. So if you're reading this, be careful. Pay attention to the signs, the missing children, the voices, the balloons. And if you ever hear a lullaby in the night, don't listen. Whatever you do, don't follow it, because once it finds you, it never lets go. The road had been long and draining. My eyelids were heavy, my hands cramped from gripping the wheel for hours, and the summer humidity had turned the cab of my truck into a sticky, suffocating box. I'd been driving for nearly 11 hours straight, chasing deadlines and ignoring the exhaustion that pressed down on me. That's when I spotted it, a tiny cluster of buildings huddled along a stretch of road. Aberage, South Dakota, according to the map on my phone. Pulling off the highway, I slowed, taking in the town. Barely 15 structures in total, most of them small, weathered houses, their windows dark like tired eyes. A single church sat at the center, its steeple thin against the dusky sky. At one end, a gas station, at the other, a restaurant bar. That was it. The silence was almost suffocating, broken only by the faint buzz of cicadas and the distant rustle of leaves in the humid air. I parked in front of the bar, noting how still the town felt, like it had been waiting for something or someone. Even the air carried a weight, thick and heavy, with a subtle metallic tang that made me flinch. My gut tensed. Something about this place felt off. Small towns had character, sure, but this one had an intensity that bordered on suffocating. I pushed open the door to the bar, the bell jingling sharply in the quiet evening. Inside, the dim lighting and near-empty room did nothing to ease my unease. 3 people were present: the bartender, a bald, bearded man with a scrutinizing gaze, and a young woman nursing a beer, staring ahead without acknowledging me. I wasn't sure what I had walked into, but I had a creeping suspicion that this town wasn't like any other I'd passed through. I slid onto a stool at the bar, trying to ignore the prickle of unease crawling up my spine. The bartender, bald and bearded, gave me a long, unreadable look before returning to polishing a glass. The young woman, sipping her beer, still didn't glance my way. I ordered a drink, then finally she spoke. "I haven't seen you before," she said, her voice rough but strangely melodic. I shrugged, keeping it casual. "Just passing through." "Long day on the road." She nodded, eyes narrowing slightly. "I figured." "What brings you here?" "The appetite of a horse," I joked. "Been driving 11 hours straight." She laughed softly, the sound both warm and eerie. I turned to signal for another beer, and when I looked back, she was watching me intently. "You're funny," she said, a hint of something unreadable in her tone. Her gaze flicked to the bartender. "Rico, should we do it?" He grunted and disappeared into the kitchen. She turned back to me, excitement barely contained. "We have a tradition here," she explained. "Anyone who drinks at the bar tells a story. Keeps things interesting in a town this small." I shrugged, exhausted, and told a tale about seeing the ocean for the first time, embellishing details for effect. She listened, captivated, eyes fixed on me, as though she were trying to memorize every word. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Now it's my turn," she said. "The story that sticks with you the longest." Before I could respond, the bartender muttered, almost under his breath, "The one about the ghoul again?" "Yes, sir," she replied. She described it as a long, pale figure that haunted anyone who heard its story. It didn't attack immediately, but once chosen, it tormented its target relentlessly until death. The first sign? Seeing things that weren't there, things that felt painfully real. I laughed it off, dismissing it as a scare tactic for outsiders. Yet something in the way she spoke made the story linger in my mind, a seed of unease taking root. I left the bar and made my way to the motel, a small 2-story building with peeling paint and a damp, musty smell that hit me as soon as I stepped inside. The lobby was empty, the fluorescent lights flickering slightly, casting long shadows across the cracked linoleum floor. I paid for a room on the first floor and lugged my bag up the narrow staircase, every step groaning beneath my weight. The room itself was small and cramped, overlooking a stretch of dark woods at the edge of town. The air was thick, still, and I felt a subtle chill creep up my spine despite the heat outside. The hum of the old air conditioner was the only sound besides the distant rustle of leaves. Something about the room felt off, like the shadows lingered a second longer than they should, like the darkness had a presence of its own. I brushed my teeth and tried to settle in, attempting to shake off the barwoman's story. Still, the image of her pale, intense eyes lingered, and the thought of the ghoul's hollow stare settled in the back of my mind. Lying on the bed, I stared at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that it was just exhaustion talking. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't truly alone in that room. Around 3 a.m., a faint knock jolted me awake. At first, I thought it was the wind or some loose part of the old building, but then it came again, sharper, more deliberate. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, the light too bright in the dark, and cautiously crept toward the door. Another knock, louder this time, rattled the thin wood. I pressed my back against it, hoping it was just a late-night guest or some animal. Then a whisper cut through the silence. "Open!" I froze. The voice was quiet, soft, but it carried a weight that made my skin crawl. My fingers tightened around the phone as the whisper came again. "Please, open!" Every instinct screamed to bolt, but fear rooted me in place. The knocks and whispers continued intermittently, punctuated by faint shuffling outside the door, each sound making my pulse hammer in my ears. I inched backward toward the bed, heart slamming, mind racing with possibilities. Was it a prank, a neighbor, or something else entirely? Then my eyes flicked to the bathroom. It had been open when I went to bed. Now the door was closed. My stomach twisted. A slow, deliberate pounding began from behind it. Each strike made the air feel heavier, like the shadows themselves were pressing in. A guttural, almost growling voice broke the pounding, chilling me to the bone. "No!" It repeated, low and calm, but each utterance struck terror into my chest. I stayed pressed against the door, frozen, listening. My mind screamed to move, but the fear of whatever was behind those walls kept me paralyzed. The hours stretched on. Every sound, every shadow seemed alive. By the time the pounding ceased, I was trembling, drenched in sweat, my mind exhausted yet unable to rest. I finally mustered the courage to move, inching toward the door. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys and phone, crawling on the cool floor. The moment I opened the door, heavy footsteps echoed behind me, deliberate and unrelenting. I bolted across the parking lot toward my truck, adrenaline fueling my every step. Then I saw it. Standing just beyond the edge of the porch light, the figure was wrong in every conceivable way. Humanoid yet distorted, tall and pale, its head unnaturally elongated. Its face was smooth and featureless, hollow eye sockets and a gaping mouth that seemed frozen in a silent scream. It didn't move, but I felt its gaze like a physical weight pressing into my chest. And then it spoke, a guttural, echoing voice that sent chills crawling down my spine. "You see me?" I slammed my keys into the ignition and floored the truck. Tires spun on gravel as I tore away, heart hammering, ears straining for the sound of pursuit. The voice didn't stop. It followed me, repeating those 3 words over and over, reverberating in my mind as the dark road stretched endlessly ahead. Hours passed in a terrifying blur. Trees and shadows blended into one another. Yet I could still hear the ghoul's whisper echoing in the cab. "You see me?" Every turn of the wheel, every mile, carried the same dread. I dared not look to the side for fear of seeing it pressed against the window. It was relentless, patient, and inescapable. Only when the first gray light of dawn began to filter through the trees did the voice fade, leaving me shaking, exhausted, and unsure if the nightmare had truly ended. Even as the town receded behind me, I knew something had followed, some part of that darkness lingering in my mind. By the time I reached Dupree, I was spent. My truck rattled along the gravel road, and the exhaustion pressed in like a physical weight. I barely helped unload the shipment, instead sitting in the cab, smoking a cigarette, and trying to ground myself in the normalcy of daylight. When my supervisor knocked on the window, concern etched across his face, I gave a weak smile. "Long night," I muttered. "Had to leave at 3 a.m. 3 a.m.? How far back were you?" he asked, frowning. I pulled up the GPS and showed him the stop. "Aberrage." He stared, incredulous. There's nothing there. Just woods for miles. I didn't argue. Something about that town didn't exist the way I'd seen it. Or perhaps it did, in some strange, horrifying form. The ghoul's words still echoed in my head, and a creeping dread settled in my stomach. Even now, I can't stop thinking about it. Some places aren't meant to be found, and some stories aren't meant to end. And that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you enjoyed these chilling stories. If you did, don't forget to drop a comment with your favorite one, hit that like button, and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales coming your way. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.